Boy, it's so quiet. You just got to love the English language, so now everybody knows how to say my last name correctly. Where's Dave, man? Hey, Dave's not here, man. He said it was going to be back. While we wait for Dave, thanks for coming. Hopefully the best for last. The best way to tell you about the content here is think of the con backwards. You want to start with what I'm about to share with you, and then you look back at what Dave Kennedy and Ben 10 and others talked about, Kevin Johnson, all the things they do. You really need to do what's in this presentation first before you ask them to try to pwn you. And I'm actually going to show you some artifacts from real attacks, a Chinese group that's a part of this, that I worked in the gaming industry with. And if you see what's in that and you understand the content in the presentation, it's already posted on SlideShare, so you can download it and see the details. So as I rip through some of these, don't bother trying to read some of the data. You can go download it later or watch the presentation again once we get started. And actually practice. Try out what we're talking about in the presentation, and then with any luck, you'll start to understand how to catch some of the stuff I'm talking about. But you will have to do it. But it is very valuable. I personally believe I have a top 10 list in security tools. The first one is log management of some kind. I'm a Splunk fan. At work, I probably wear a Splunk shirt because I own like 30 of them because I put on conferences for 6 years, and I've got so many Splunk shirts, not even funny. And then after log management, something like a Big Fix or a Tanium or something where I can ask the system a question and it can return me an answer, like Google's GUR or Mozilla's Investigator, products like that. The third will be LogMD. We'll talk about that in the presentation. And then 4 through 10 are blank. And then starting at 11, I actually start thinking about security tools. So if you can get an idea there, 1 through 10 are actually the basics. How many people here don't have any kind of logging on their systems? I should have no hands because everybody has logging. Okay, this is focused around Windows, but the logic will apply to other operating systems as well. So Dave must have got hung up, so we're going to go ahead and move forward. Okay, my name is Michael Goff, in case you didn't figure it out from the presentation. And who am I? You can read that earlier. I am a blue team defender ninja. Right? I fight the bad guys. That's my job. I'm a malware archaeologist. Title was given to me in a presentation I did with the feds. And they said, yeah, this guy's a malware archaeologist. We were having a conversation. I studied archaeology in college. And they knew I'd liked malware, so we were just talking, and they gave me that name, and it kind of stuck. And I'm also a logaholic. Hello, my name is Michael. I'm a logaholic. Okay, show me state means you got to show me the love. Come on. Hello, my name is Michael. I'm a logaholic. Okay, it's the end of the day. My job is to keep you going. And then Dave's going to introduce me because he just showed up. And you thought Johnny Christmas was late.
Goff goes early.
Well, I had to fill in for you.
All right, sorry about that. Welcome, everybody, to our final session. You have met Michael Goff, correct? I'm really happy to actually have Mike up here this year, and this talk is going to actually be awesome. So without further ado, let me give you some of his bio, and we'll let him get started.
Uh-oh.
Well, we'll finish. We'll start after the part after he got out of jail. Michael is the creator of LogMD, a free Windows logging and malicious behavior discovery tool that helps defenders improve their Windows logging, discover malicious behavior and malware for blue teamers and incident responders. Michael also created Malware Management Framework, a process to help discover and manage malware programs. Lastly, Michael's developed several Windows logging cheat sheets to provide a starting point on detailed logging of Windows hosts, all of which can be found on his website, malwarearchaeology.com. This guy is amazing when it comes to malware, and this is a major, major issue. Please, everybody, give it up for Michael Goff.
Thank you, sir. No worries. Okay, so the malware management framework is something we're going to talk about. It's a resource. If you understand vulnerability management, it's pretty much the same thing. You read malware reports, you pull out the unique tidbits or artifacts, and you improve your defenses. That's really it, okay? That's the malware management. If you go to malwaremanagementframework.org, it's in the slides later, you can read what it is and how to go about doing it, how to start practicing it. So if you really want to understand and start catching malware artifacts, you'll find that about 80+%, it's really more like 90-95%, of the behavior of malware is the same. Even the attackers, as you heard Dave Kennedy talk earlier, the behavior in which the red team does, you need to understand that because it turns out they do similar things all the time. And we're going to talk about that. Several Windows logging cheat sheets, we'll cover that in a minute, and then the LogMD tool, which we're going to cover as well. My co-partner, by the way, how many people here have listened to Breaking Down Security? All right, so Breaking Down Security, Brian Betcher, the co-host, is my partner with LogMD. So if you haven't listened to Breaking Down Security, please do. They cover all kinds of topics. They had Ben Johnson from Carbon Black on a couple weeks ago. They have a whole wide range, so I recommend you take a listen. I'm occasionally on there as well. If you want to follow me on the Twitters, Hacker Hurricane is my Twitter handle. It's also my blog, hackerhurricane.com, if you want to follow my rants. And so how do you find me? Well, it's as simple as Googling it because there's nothing else malware archaeology on the Googles. It's pretty much just me. So why listen to me? Back in 2012, I was working for a gaming company, and we got compromised in the worst way by the Chinese. They're known, the group's called WinNTI, and when we got compromised, it was back in May 2012, June 2012. And we found this stuff, we documented it, we tracked everything down, all the phishing, all the links, all the domains, all the malware, what it did, how it did it, and we shared that with the feds so they can declassify it. There's a process when you deal with IR, and you want the feds to be involved, you have to give them the details, they have to declassify it, then share it with your competitors. It's kind of timely. And we got a call one day from, I think, Reuters newspaper, and Kaspersky was launching this report in April 2013. We found this long before, and they named us as part of the research saying our company had been compromised. Well, we got compromised, we lost no data because we caught them right away. And so I'm going to share with you how we caught them. Now, after 2012 and 2014, we had another campaign. It happened the day I left for vacation over Thanksgiving. They love the holidays. So my poor bastard colleague had to deal with this until I got back, and then the two of us had to go about dealing with the 2014 attack. And it's interesting on what they do and how they do it, and I'm going to share those tidbits with you. In 2014, at the end of the project, we gave an infected VM to one of the big IR firms. I won't call them out. The point here is they can have a bad day just like you, so you really should try to understand when you use IR firms a little bit about what's going on, so with that when you ask them for some advice or some background, saying, here, I got a VM, can you tell me what you find? Have in mind what you think's going on, so when they give you your answer back, you can kind of level set them and say, yeah, they got what I got and more, or they got everything I got. They came back and said, yep, it's clean. So in this case, they failed, and I'm going to show you what they actually did not find. So again, I'm an archaeologist in training in college, and so Darwin and all that's a big thing in archaeology. But we must evolve, okay? Malware evolves. And if we don't, we're going to die. So you better evolve or die. Well, in this case, it's basically evolve or get breached. And we know if you get breached, that means an RGE, right? Everybody knows what an RGE is, right? A resume generating event. What's the number one thing you do in an incident response event? Yeah, right there. Update that puppy. That is absolutely your number one thing to do. Trust me here. Sane or rational management will become irrational. If you work for one of those companies, like Target, swept house, they cleaned house and got rid of a lot of people, you might want to have this updated immediately upon having an incident when you have a spare moment. Trust me, I know what I speak of here. Yeah, so let's look at a quick look at the stats. I think it's important just from an understanding of what the bad guys are doing. And Verizon has a DBIR. If you haven't read this, please read this. Don't get hung up on the details about whether or not the top 10 vulns are really the top 10 vulns. Try to get what they're trying to say out of it. The VERIS framework doesn't record everything about it. It's what we present to the VERIS framework that they report about. So it's missing some details. You have to understand the context. But in this case, why are we here? Hackers compromise us, our companies, in minutes. You heard Dave Kennedy allude to this. And again, you saw Dan do this on the Mac. He sent the phishing email with Squarespace. The guy clicked on it. The reporter was owned, right? That took minutes. And in the reality, when they start stealing our data, that takes them only a few days, right? Dave Kennedy pointed that out too. In a few days, they finally find where your keys to your castles are, and they start stealing them. How many people here think they can detect an attack within days? Okay. You're really going to like the information in this presentation then, because there's no reason you can't with the data I'm about to give you. So, it also talked about in the DBIR the time to compromise and our time to detect it. If you notice in the graph, the gap is widening, okay? Hackers' time to compromise is getting faster. They're getting very quick in compromising your machine and getting the data out, and your ability to detect them is also increasing, but they're doing it faster, so the gap is growing. They're getting better faster than we are. All right. Also, in this funny triangle of stuff, law enforcement, fraud, and internal investigations, you discovering, right? Fraud and you discovering events and incidents are going down. Okay? You're taking longer to detect them, and what's happening is the dreaded third-party call, or the feds are telling you, hey, you got a problem. Brian Krebs just have you. Anybody see my shirt the other day? Nobody wants to be on Krebs' list? Yeah, Brian Krebs just reported you got compromised. Nobody wants that call. Droidx in 2015 was taken down. It's why the federal list was really high. There was kind of a spark, and then when they caught Droidx and took it down, they notified everybody. So that actually spiked because of Droidx, just FYI. So it did pad the numbers a little bit. But again, we finding it is slower than someone calling us. That's not good. Chasing hashes. This is a big change, okay? Usually when Bob gets malware and Alice and Mary get malware, they're the same malware. What we're seeing now is the malware that Bob gets is the same malware but different hashes on Alice and Mary's machine. And I actually experienced this with Droidx as well. They're becoming unique, meaning as they infect your box, it is generating a unique hash on your system, which means if you use Yara or any kind of malware signatures like AV or anything else that's going off a signature, it won't work because that hash is unique to your machine. In Droidx 2015's case, the end of December 2015, every time I rebooted the box, the malware changed its hash and its file name and its key information. So it morphed every time the box rebooted. So that means this whole idea of chasing hashes, of bad hashes, forget about it. It doesn't work. Symantec says 1 million new threats into the wild each day. Problems getting bigger. SAN says malicious macros embedded in Word docs are starting to get used more and more. We've seen it with ransomware, Droidx, and many others, Angler, etc. Sophos says, now this is important to understand, the difference between APT and commodity malware. Sophos came out with a blog article that said 70% of malware is unique to one company. That means they're targeting Bob. 80% is 10 or more. That means they're targeting Bob's industry. So the AV industry focuses on the 20% because it's what most of us see on the internet. It's what's in the web and the drive-bys and the emails and the phishes, right? It's the WordPress, Drupal, and Joomla O-Days that they compromise 1 million websites. That's how Angler gets on your box. That's what they focus on because it's the most of what we see. And they don't do much for APT at all. So let's take a look at some of these advanced artifacts that I've been involved with. So this is the WinNTI malware. This is the results that came out of Splunk log management. And in here you can see the malware launched. Again, don't bother reading this. You can see it offline. I've already presented it, so you can really study it. I'll summarize at the end what's going on. So the malware launched, right? This is them infecting the machine. Now some of you that read it, you'll start to see a pattern, hopefully. Then we see them hiding malware in the registry. That's unique. Why? No files on disk. We'll talk about how they got away with that. They're modifying a service. That's always killer, right? You should always, always look at new services or modified services in Windows. By the way, it is the only thing in logging that is on by default. All this stuff I'm going to talk about is not on by default. All of this here, you've got to configure. We're going to talk about how. So then they escalate permissions, right? They get in the box, they do things, and now they've got to escalate permissions or change permissions. Here they're checking the services being used, were CPL support. Who needs Windows error reporting when bad guys are in box? They don't want that doing anything. They modify the permissions, so now they're either changing them up or down. And then they're also pushing out more stuff with command prompt and C script. By the way, these 3 slides, I defy you to show me an administrator or pen tester. Pen testers look a little like this, but trust me, the malwareans are the only ones that look this way. Admins never behave in these long command line executions. It doesn't happen. All right? Using the registry for storage. This is not just APT now. We're seeing it with Kovtar. Also did this. And here they're updating the registry. We'll show you a little more later. Change registry permissions. They want to make it harder for me to remediate the systems or even me to see the registry keys if I'm browsing regedit or regquery. Or they just want to give me a permission denied. And they're also changing permissions on files. They're trying to hook the system so I can't easily remediate the box. Bad behavior comes really obvious. We're on the 5th slide now where you just see pages and pages of info. Doing recon. So they're checking out what's going on. They're going after terminal services. Why? They want to RDP around the environment. And of course, they're querying the users. They want to know who they're going to go after, what the rights are of the user, right? They got to get all that information. Now, if you get really good at this, and again, is APT sophisticated? A lot of people say APT is sophisticated. What if I actually catch their credentials? Now who's sophisticated? So we actually caught them logging in with their password, Samsung. We reported this to Samsung just as a FYI. Password in some APT here had your name in it, so maybe you guys have this. So we provided them our data, and we never heard from them. But nevertheless, the cool thing was we knew this is the box they were connecting to get stuff and do stuff from. And we had their password, which means we can replicate it potentially in the lab. So persistence. This is where it got interesting. The 2012 persistence was pretty typical. Run key changes, service changes, pretty typical stuff, right? Nothing really too advanced. Hide the files with permission changes, DLL injection, yada, yada. But this changed quite a bit. They actually use DLLs, again, short names. And you notice here it says C users public. The bad guys like to use public accessible directories. C users public, Windows web, all users, your own profile. Why? They don't have to worry about rights initially, right? They don't have to worry about it being elevated at the time they drop and execute their payload. So that's why they do this. The other thing they do is they execute these long, cryptic, scripty things, right? And inside that, there's an indicator here. Software clients. What's a reg key doing in a command line execution? I defy you to show me an admin that ever looks like this. So here's the actual key, and here's the values that were found within the key. The file key, the put file, and the read. Now, of course, they're obfuscated to you. They don't want us to know what's in it. But they made a mistake. In the course of infecting the machine, it had 3 situations. The binary was copied to the registry key. It then got modified to hex, and then they encrypted it in some way. This particular system hung, allowing us to harvest in hex the fact that the file was there. And 4D5A, as we most know, is MZ, which means it's a binary. So now I can just pull that value, change it to a MZ, just basically redo the file, save it, and I can actually get a copy of the binary. So it told us it was a driver, it was a .sys file, and so now at least we had an idea of what was doing it. We could get the hash off of it at that point and everything else. These reads and put files were just the command scripts of, again, reading a system's information and putting the data and infections on the box. And by the way, this key was 256K. Anybody have any idea what the average large key in Windows is? Or how many over, let's say, 20K there are? About a dozen. So when you get a large key like this showing up, it's real obvious if you focus at large reg keys. So persistence. They had some infectors. One was for the DLLs, infect.exe, and then one was for the drivers, infect.sys.exe. Pretty straightforward. Now what did this do in order to gain persistence was they used our own admin tools against us. They actually modified McAfee Framework Service and the Bez client helper to actually, they were infected, the hash changed, and when those services started, it read the registry, read that file key, pulled it out, decrypted it, wrote it to disk, started because the service CPL support was just spinning because there was no file on disk. So once they dropped the file on disk, the worst CPL support service started, and then they deleted it from disk. So when the system's live, I can't see anything. This is all during boot up and shutdown. We tried a few others. We tried it on several binaries just to see if the stuff would work. It did. So they've done a lot of work on these infectors. And they attempted a few others. We saw that in the logs, and they failed. They tried to infect the game blades, maybe by accident, or they were just trying it out. And it didn't work. Game doesn't quite program the same as regular utilities. And this is what it looks like. If you run procmon on boot up, you do it in boot mode, you should get familiar with this tool, then you end up seeing here that BES client helper is actually writing out this WLX sys64.sys to program files, common files. That's the file name they changed the worst CPL support service to point to. And then the BES client helper read the registry, dropped the file, it loaded, and there it is loading. That was how they persisted. No files on disk, and when it was on disk, it immediately got deleted. Nasty little secret, Tripwire never caught this because it dropped, executed, and deleted before Tripwire could track it. How about some commodity malware? Now, that's not as tricky. Kovtar actually uses an interesting tidbit. They use a null byte in the registry. What happens with that is when you go read the registry key run, it throws this error because it can't interpret the null byte. Now, after you hit OK, the other values that are in there will display, but their bad payload will not. So the administrator might go, it's okay, no big deal. Turns out it is a big deal. They're hiding the ability to let you see what's loading Kovtar. By the way, large reg key is anything over 20K. Kovtar also utilized large reg keys. So we're seeing what's happening in APT come down to Angler-delivered Kovtar type infections. So we're seeing APT behavior now in commodity. Droidx artifacts are interesting. Every time we got infected with Droidx last year, here's 4 examples of payloads. You can see that they somewhat look the same, but they're different in some aspect. Okay, we've got standard 1-digit executable. We have a 444 JPEG. It's not really a JPEG, it's the configuration information. If you open up in a viewer, it's just a Google image. You have a batch file, which did nothing but compile in variables .v, b, and s, so when they executed in the command line, they actually assembled the VBS. Why? Strings looking for VBS would fail because it's not VBS. It's one line has V, one line has B, one line has S. Obfuscation. Then they also utilized PowerShell. The VBS script then compiled with the same logic. PowerShell.p, S, and 1, and it built the PowerShell script. And then, of course, randomly named executables every time the box got infected. So chasing the hash, the bad hash, was not an option. So we had to look at the behavior. That's what we chase, is the behavior. So here's the Droidx persistence in December 2015. In this case, what happened was, it's in memory only. There is nothing on disk at this point on the system when I inspect the system. Now, part of some of the stuff I'm about to teach you is how you'll collect this stuff. And you really should do it because it's not that burdensome. But here it is, the loading of 43 B5 temp and some long string. So on shutdown, the run key was created and the file was dropped as the system shut down. And then when it started up, it loaded this key and then deleted it as soon as it loaded. So during the system being live, I saw nothing. If I enable file and registry auditing, I catch this. Okay? Nothing more than looking at the run keys and nothing more looking at the user's directory structure. Those 2 auditing tips are how you catch this odd persistence. In memory, shut down, write to disk, on boot up, read, execute, delete. And there it is. And there it is being deleted. So, Droidx is back. They were down. They were taken down December 2015. It's unfortunate to say, or maybe from my perspective, since I'm a malware IR guy, they're back. They're now utilizing DLLs of the same cryptic structure. But in the run key, they're actually loading run DLL on that funny item. Okay, so again, another mechanism using DLLs to load instead of executables, and making it so, does anybody know what this is? It's like kind of cryptic, I don't know what it is. So they're making it hard for us to do malware research or investigations. So how do we detect this malicious behavior? Takeaway number 1, this is something everybody can do. The Windows logging cheat sheets, right? We have the Windows logging. That's the base logging cheat sheet. What do I set, Mike? Hey, I need to know what it is to detect this stuff. Well, there you go. That one right there. And you mentioned file and registry auditing. So what do I set there? Well, there's the file and registry auditing cheat sheets. And oh, by the way, I use Splunk or another log management. Do you have some samples? There's the Splunk logging cheat sheet. Okay? And then, of course, you read the malware management framework and you start the process of looking at these reports that people like Mandiant or FireEye or anybody else put out. And you start saying, oh, that's a cool new tidbit, like the Kovtar null byte. And you implement that and search for that. And you can find them all at malwarearchaeology.com. So PowerShell. Of course, I had to pick on this, but how many people here are actually logging and looking for any odd PowerShell executions? Of course, by now, after Dave and Ben's talk, you definitely are. I see one hand. But it's coming. Actually, it's coming in a big way, and B, it's already here. You saw it in Droidx in the samples I showed you. You clearly saw and heard Dave and Ben 10 talk about it. And of course, there's Ben 10 and Dave at the Cavs game when they won. And of course, Carlo uses it with Metasploit. He has a module that specifically looks at the stuff I tell you to log. He checks the system or whether or not you're logging what I tell you and what the industry tells you to do. And he's actually then acts appropriately based on the log level of the box. And of course, Kevin, if you have any chance of catching Kevin, here he is in his outfit that's apparently now been retired, his little outfit, Star Wars outfit from the 501. If you have any chance of catching these guys, you've got to do this. Okay, that's why I said this talk is first and all theirs are actually second. Droidx was using it. I showed you the samples there. And ransomware is now using PowerShell. .NET's on the box. Everything they need is right there. They just have to figure out a way to do PowerShell. And again, you saw Ben 10's not PowerShell and how to do that. And logging, by the way, sucks by default out of Windows. So they know, for the most part, nothing's logged. You won't see any of their behavior. Takeaway number 2. It's a show me state, so I'm going to show you. So here it is. Just released. I just posted this. We now have a Windows PowerShell logging cheat sheet. And I would like to thank Matt Graber for reviewing it for me and giving me some feedback. Ben 10, when he gets over his jet lag, I hope to get his feedback as well. But it's 7 pages of information. So if you, again, do everything that's in the cheat sheets, you have a chance of actually catching people like Ben 10 and Dave and Kevin and Carlos. Okay? It is designed to catch the people I just mentioned, and you get it at malwarearchaeology.com. Takeaway number 3. How do we catch this stuff? Command line logging. All those pages of the WinNTI and the Kotar and the Droidx I showed you, all that detail came from command line logging. Now, Windows 8.1 and 2012 Server had it in 2014 when we had WinNTI infections, but not Windows 7 and 2008 Server. So we're lucky that I turned it on for the WinNTI 2014 to catch all that behavior. All that stuff you saw was command line logging. It's crucial, not on by default. And again, we caught all these scripts, C-script, command.exe, cackles, netown, takeown. How many administrators would do this in bulk? Not many. Pen testers, maybe. And so there's 6 commands in here. And again, if you kind of look at the quantity in which the bad guys execute, that's what you're looking for. Here's an example query. It comes right out of the Splunk logging cheat sheet. These are all the administrative tools within Windows. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And you're free to add whatever you want. I'm constantly updating this. I update the cheat sheets as well. And the idea here is I'm looking for the execution greater than 2. That means when admin Bob goes to a box, types netuse or ipconfig, I won't get an alert. But then he does something like a takeown or a C-script or all the stuff that I've shown you already. This thing lights up a Christmas tree. This query, with the logging that I'm talking about, caught the WinNTI 2014 and 2012 attacks. That guy right there. Okay? That led us to getting all the information that I shared with you. So how do you do this? Practice malware management, for sure. Watch the reports. Your own experiences, as well as these cons, these presentations, and clearly the articles done by the Mandiant guys. If you don't watch and follow them, you really need to. Malware discovery, it's the idea of actually being proactive of looking for malware and checking a system. And of course, your typical malware analysis, however you want to practice that or give it to an entity or a group that does it. So what do we look for? Logs, of course, properly configured. This is something that's built into every system you have. Windows by default sucks, so turn it on. Get it into GPO, enable it. You got to make some pretty big files on there, but again, CPU is not an issue anymore. Storage is not an issue anymore. You have the resources you need to collect it locally. Okay, command line details, huge. Look at for the admin tools being misused. In quantity, it is not normal. And if it is for a particular admin or two, you can kind of exclude that out. Bob always does these 4 things, so I'm going to exclude Bob and these 4 things. And now your alert gets much smaller. This is surprisingly not very noisy at greater than 2. You'll see a lot of 3s hit, and you have to make the decision whether you want to up that to 3. New files dropped anywhere on disk. We look for file hashes, unique file hashes. Again, new stuff. I don't care if it's in the malware at that point. I'm looking for new stuff. Hashes changed. The infection of Bez client or McAfee, for example. File and auditing, registry auditing. Again, that's how I see the auto run keys changing, and I see files being dropped in the user directory structure. Registry compare. Snapshot of a good system against snapshot of a bad system. That's how I found a lot of the stuff. It's how I found the unique things to the McAfee framework and BES client service. Large reg keys. When the WinNTI and Covtar drop these huge payloads in the registry or large scripts in the registry, and I whitelist out the reg keys that are normal, I can even drop that down to 10K. So even if they split that malware in a bunch of pieces, I can easily see that this occurred. And of course, the IP and who is info, I'm really interested in the Windows Firewall. I want it on in any mode in every enterprise. You're going to see the executable and the IP it visited. Different from NetFlow. That box is infected, but I have no idea what binary actually infected the box. The Windows Firewall gives you that. Just put it on any mode and let it collect it in the logs. And then, of course, you must expand the PowerShell detection like I showed you with the cheat sheet. And if you want to do VirusTotal lookups, obviously they have the largest Microsoft good hash repo in existence for free. And so you can look up those hashes or pay their service to do it very quickly. 4 per minute for free is what you get. So what do we take away from all this? Well, 3 things. You have 3 options. Do nothing, which will cause an RGE for sure. Log management or SIM. Yes, it costs money. It's worth every dime in my opinion. I don't care whose you buy. You really want to use the Splunk logging cheat sheet as the evaluation for any log management tool you look at. If it can't do what I do in the Splunk logging cheat sheet, don't buy the product. That's my advice. Okay, but again, it is the best option. By far, I think logging is the #1 security tool. Again, top 10. Logging #1, big fix type question tool #2, LogMD #3, 4 through 10 are not security tools. Your own processes, your own things are best. But what if you don't have log management or SIM? Well, it turned out, short of wEvent-util or PowerShell get event, it really didn't exist. So Brian and I wrote it. We created a tool called LogMD. Takeaway #4. LogMD is the log and malicious discovery tool. It doesn't just do logging. Okay? It replaces several command line tools that exist out there and some GUI tools. So we took some old, hasn't been updated since XP days, threw them out, and replaced it with LogMD. And again, the first thing you do when you run this in a box, it will fail because you will not have the stuff set in the cheat sheet. All right, so it answers how do I set the what I already told you about. You get an audit report. From the audit report, it'll tell you how your system is compared to the Windows logging cheat sheet, but also the US GCBs and the Aussie cyber standards. So depending on what you have to comply to. It has whitelists. I've got a lot of normal noise. How do I get rid of it? We provide you whitelist. You put your trusted command line your command line executions in there, and then when you run LogMD again, you won't see that in your report. So it allows you to filter out the good. We're focusing on good hashes, not bad hashes. There are over 500 million malware hashes created in 2015. There are only about 150,000 files, of which a third of those are duplicates in a typical Windows box. So what would you rather filter out, good stuff or go after the bad stuff? Okay, so we can filter all that out. Also, if you turn on file and registry auditing, highly recommend you do, especially by the cheat sheets, you can filter this out so as you see the noise, you filter it out in the whitelists, you take the whitelists and you apply that to your systems and you turn it off. You see some really heavy noise items. For example, services key, I monitor, but I have to turn off TCP. It's way too noisy. Every time I get an IP, every time it renews, blah, 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 change. Yeah, too noisy, turn it off. If you get a high noise ratio, do not monitor it, unless it's critical to some ponage you're looking for. All right, so the whitelist becomes the way you tweak your log management. John Strand says, log management companies are lying to you. They want you to log all the things so they can sell you lots of license. No, you log all the things so you can run a tool like this to figure out what you actually need and to turn it off so now you're collecting exactly what you need. And then a CSV report. We do everything in Excel because Excel's powerful filter and sorter. Or you can do the big data thing like we just saw here next door last hour. And here's an example of the audit report. So here's all the settings of the advanced auditing. Here's CIS benchmarks. Here's the Windows logging cheat sheet and this PC. Okay, and then you get the other USGCB. This is an older one. Have been added to this as well as the Aussie standard. So there's 2 more columns. And we have footnotes, and it goes down and it tells you all the keys to set and everything else. So everything you need is in this report when you run it to set the system to what you want. Test it, get some sample GPO systems going under this policy you create, and then eventually push it out enterprise-wide is my recommendation. So the purpose of LogMD, Malware Analysis Lab, initially to speed up our analysis is what we wrote it for. And possibly someone says, I'm compromised, can you help me? Yeah, run this tool and give me the reports back. If you take 1 day, my hourly rate's a lot less. If you take a week to get me those reports, my hourly rate just went way up because you're going to be more difficult to work with. So it actually allows me to gauge my clients. But again, it's good for investigating a suspect system. So it provides a lot of info there. The Windows system, right? It autos the Windows Advanced Audit Policies. Okay, Mike, you tell me to set it. How do I audit for that? And how do I produce a report? It's a clear text report. You can put it in Word, format it. It's great for consultants. Do it any way you want. All this is free. You can help move and push security forward. That's the idea. Hey, you're failing this. We got to set this stuff. We got to catch Ben 10 and Dave and Kevin and all those guys and Carlos, whoever your pen testers are. You got to catch them. And again, you give us IR folks what we need. I need to know what the behavior is on the box. It doesn't help me that the box is infected and I got these fancy consoles. I need the IP address so I can go into Splunk and say, who else went to this IP? Bob, Alice, and Mary are infected. They visited this IP. Go take them offline. That's the data I need very quickly. All right. Take a full system file hash snapshot. I can take a good system. This is what we did with WinNTI, and I do quite often in investigations. I take the snapshot of a good system. Maybe they just built it off the gold image. I take that hash file, hash baseline or reg baseline, both, registry and hash. I take it to a suspect system, and I run logmd with a minus RC or a minus HC, and I can compare it to those, and I get much less results. It's still a lot, but trust me, it's a lot less. You're not talking 150,000 entries, you're talking 1,000 entries, which is pretty easy to filter through. You can deploy it. It's command line only, right? So SSCM, LANDESK, PSExec, however you want to deploy this command line thing. No more red shot, no more reg scanner, no more GUI stuff. This is all command line. Makes it real easy for you guys. You can also discover tricky malware artifacts like large reg keys. Minus RS and logmd will find by default keys over 20K, and yes, as a whitelist. Whitelist out the normal keys, and then infect a box with Covtar, and you'll understand exactly why this is a good thing. The null byte from Covtar as well, and also the auto run locations. We're going to have a report that shows the auto runs. So if the run key changes, you'll see the change. And again, replace several tools. We want to get rid of some of these legacy tools. They haven't been updated. They're not maintained, but all of us rely on it. How many people here have used or heard of RedShot? It's GUI based. How do I deploy that in mass? You can't. I need command line version to use BigFix or SSCM or even PowerShell or however I want to do it. And again, the whole idea here is to answer, is the system clean or is it infected? And if you still don't know, just reimage the box. But at least you now have reduced the amount of questions you have to ask. And obviously, do this all quickly. So here's the free edition. Audit your settings. Do you comply to the checklists or not? Pick one, whatever you want to do. Gives you all the data. Harvest security relevant information. Whitelist the information. Perform a full file system hash, registry hash as well, large reg keys as well. And compare those against the suspect system. You get one report, report.csv, and that's what you'll get for free. Pro does everything free does. There's a dozen reports, and we're adding more every day. It's only $300. We're following the Burp Suite model. We believe everybody needs this tool. So for Brian and I to maintain it, we have to charge a little bit of money. But again, per administrator, $300. I don't care if you have 1,000 seats or 10,000 seats. And we're adding stuff all the time. So you'll get free updates for a year. We release an update about every quarter. And you'll be able to integrate Sysmon and WLS logs. Sysmon's a free service from Microsoft, the sysinternals, Mark Rasinovich, that provides some additional cool logging info like hashes of the files that executed to make it easier to do lookups and virus total. WLS is a replacement syslog agent, but we have a special agreement with Jason where we're actually able to harvest the WLS logs before it goes to syslog, so you can actually deploy this agent and not send it to syslog and just collect it locally so we can harvest it. And it does a lot of fancy stuff as well. So if you want to have a syslog agent but yet aren't ready to send your data there, that's an option for you. Let's see what else. And we have a very detailed manual. It's about 35, 40 pages, so it walks through all the examples. Future versions coming up here. Whois lookups. So all the IPs that we get, we're going to do whois, so country, origin, network name, and all that stuff. So it makes it real easy for you to determine, hey, WinWord just went to Ukraine. Yeah, that's never supposed to happen. CScript and PowerShell just went to Russia. Yeah, that's never supposed to happen. So it's designed to make you get the information and make a decision very quickly. Also, we're going to integrate virus total. Google gave us permission with their changes that you'll be able to send the hashes that we get out of logmd to virus total to do a lookup. It's an option. It won't be forced on you because some people can't send this data. And then you have to, as part of it, have the option to send them the payload. So you'll be able to script that and say, I want to send all these hashes for a minute free or pay for the service. And then figure out which ones they don't know about, they've never seen, and then you can upload those files to them and get the results back, and logmd will have a report for that. We also look for parentless processes, right? Word launched this other thing. It's now parentless because Word closed. That's a big indicator. I see that a lot in commodity and APT. The WinNTI was all the time. You know, there's a parentless PowerShell. That shouldn't happen. Also, all the processes can be whitelisted as well, another feature, and then the virus total lookups will be integrated as well. So let's look at some results real quick. Here's a typical crypto event. Pretty boring, really. Crypto executed, it deleted itself, and it cleared out the volume shadow copy. I'm starting to see crypto do a lot more from a command line perspective. I'm seeing it delete the Windows backup logs and the history and all that stuff. It's starting to do a lot more. Okay, it's also trying to capture credentials now. So they're expanding beyond just the encryption part. So if you evaluate something like CryptoLocker, in this case, you have to actually log out as the infected user, create a new account, Bob, log in as Bob, upload LogMD, and run it under Bob's context to get this data, because clearly anything on the box got cryptoed, all the reports. Here's a malicious Word doc executing. Here it is, dropping the batch file and the VBS file. You can see the way that this has been compiled, that they're trying to obfuscate something. Here they're checking for pinging, in this case China. Why? Am I being evaluated in a lab or a sandbox? I want to know if I have network connectivity. Here it is executing the actual binaries. You can see they're doing it multiple times. And again, app data local, some funky name, some funky binary. And then again, the 9 exe with a parameter 3, whatever that means. Another ping, am I still connected? And that's Droidx. In this case, here we are looking at Winward, talking some foreign IPs. Again, shouldn't occur. C-script, same thing. We now know what the IPs are to look in Splunk or your network logs to figure out who else is infected. And of course, here's the pinging occurring, and this is all Windows Firewall-based information, by the way. And then here's all the execution. One of the things to point out, remember those admin tools I talked about, the big list? They're utilizing sysprep. There is a known exploit if you make a bad DLL called cryptbase.dll and you drop it in the Windows sysprep directory and you execute sysprep space cryptbase DLL, it will load it. It's a known bug. But they're finding other ways to do it. So I'm seeing this in commodity malware, okay? Not advanced malware. It's moving down the chain. So you better get better. And all this stuff, more Droidx. So again, they're in CSV format. Excel has the best filtering option. You can go big data if you want. If you were to do this on 100 machines, yeah, big data away and let me know how that works for you. Or you can take the CSVs and suck them up into Splunk. Because remember, we're only collecting security relevant information. I don't collect all other system stuff, so if you really want to collect a smaller subset for Splunk and save on licensing, you could actually use the CSV files because they're comma delimited and suck those into Splunk and format them. And again, Excel's got filters and sorting. It's awesome. It's real easy for you to filter stuff out. And save it in XLS like you saw in yellow there with the ransomware stuff, color code it, and again, text files for Notepad++ so you can do compares and whatnot. So what do you get? We now know what process is executed, where it executed from. I showed you that with the WinNTI as well as the commodity malware sets. Who, again, the IPs and where they visited, very important piece of information. And by the way, this slide is what you should go ask every next-gen vendor if they actually can very quickly tell you this information. This is what us IR guys and us incident responders and active defenders, this is the data we need to figure out which box Dave Kennedy or Ben 10 just popped. Okay, that's my goal. I need this information. I want to know what executed. Where did it execute from? App data or Windows System 32 or Windows System 32 WBM, right? I want to know where it went, who it visited. I think in one of the talks, Dan's talk in Mac, he said, yeah, use the IP tool. It will catch it logging out and notify the user, right? So you want to see that connection. NetFlow's not enough. I need the process name that's going to Russia. And then the details to remediate. This is important. If I can remediate the box and cut the head of the snake off, right? Kill the auto runs, delete the reg keys, delete the files, I don't have to reimage the box. Now when WinNTI hit us, they hit hundreds of PCs and hundreds of servers. I can't reimage all that stuff. It's not an option. So you better get good at this stuff and be able to clean the malware, right? So those remediation details are key. Some of the next-gen stuff can quarantine and delete automatically. So you evaluate that what best fits your organization. But again, what if I don't have that option, that $100,000 a pop option? And again, the details to improve your active defense. I did all that evaluation in the 2 samples I gave you, the Droidx. It took me 15 minutes. It used to take me an hour. That's how fast LogMD is for me in a malware lab. So here's the resources. LogMD.com is a tool. Malware Archaeology is the cheat sheets. You have files to take home. There's about 6 of them now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them now. Sysmon cheat sheet will be coming out in the future now that I'm done with PowerShell. I may be updating it after I get some more feedback. And again, it's already out on SlideShare, so you can see the gruesome details of the attack. But all those items were in that admin list. That's what triggered those alerts. That's why I had that data. And here's where you can find us. We'll take questions. Let us know if you have any. And shoot, I am done. I am all that's holding you from leaving and or whatever's next. Yeah. Log management's where you'd go with that. I can, for example, take LogMD, distribute it with BigFix, run the report, depending on what I'm looking for, centralize those, and parse through them pretty quickly. But what you have as an app is different. So you're going to have more values in the report because you run some odd apps that I don't, and I've got to filter those out, right? Sure, you can run. Hey, there's some scripting geniuses in here. You heard Dave talk about all of his scripting stuff in Ben 10. Yeah, you can script your. Again, this is command line. You can take the output, parse through the CSV, and script it. That's what I do. I've got all kinds of stuff, and what I script out is what we're turning into features into the tool. So good question. Any more? Don't be afraid. Details of the attacks, anything you want. I won't bite. No, some of the boot stuff, the UEFI protection of the disk does do some of the boot disk stuff. This is a big concern. I've been communicating with Dave Cowan and the guys from TZWorks. How can I detect these bootkits that actually modify it? UEFI will kind of block the bootkit structure because they're locking it. But right now that's a big issue. So BitLocker, no. We had BitLocker systems infected, no problem. Because it's inside Windows, so once BitLocker releases and opens everything up, it runs just fine. Yes? Yep. Yep. It is. The list would be all the auto-run locations. So we are going to be putting together a report underscore auto-runs for this very reason. It is the place you will focus on first is the auto-run locations. It's where the persistence will live. After that, I generally focus 100% on the report itself. I then will look at the hash compares and the reg compares if I need to look for more data. Because once you turn this logging on, all the command line executions of the behavior of what the malware or bad guy did is really, really obvious. And it will point you, as you saw with software clients, or the classes key, they also use that one, and the star key, the asterisk key, which is the top. It will point you to where to go look if you capture all this command line stuff. The command line is number one to turn on. And it will point you to the keys to look for 9 times out of 10. The Kovtar stuff, not so much, but they were large reg keys, so they stuck out in the large reg size report. So large keys for sure. Again, yes, there's still a lot of data, but focus on the auto runs. We're going to be doing that automatically as part of the report. So great question. Yeah, it is painful to look through a lot of. Remember, it's not 150,000 entries. We're getting it down to like 1,000. So us IR guys can look at it pretty quickly and go, yeah, that's not it. Yeah, that's not it. Yeah, that's not it. I recommend people actually turn on file auditing of the prefetch. First, turn it on. It's off by default on SSDs, by the way. So turn it on because Microsoft was afraid of killing SSDs, so they turned it off. So if you have an SSD and you want to catch the prefetch information, what actually executed, forensics guys use this pretty heavily. I recommend you audit that because it's really good backup information of what actually executed within Windows. Any other questions? I saw another hand over here. Maybe got answered. Yes? Nothing. The bad guys can't do it. The Chinese actually did it in 2012. We think there were 2 actors in the environment. One guy cleared the logs, very sloppy. If you're using log management, that's a stupid thing to do because you're now giving us an easy alert. Why are all these systems logs being cleared? That just doesn't happen. It's easier, it's actually better and more covert to rotate the logs, but the logging cheat sheet says turn them way up. Your security log's now a gig, your PowerShell is going to be at least a half gig, and your sysmon log will be a gig. Okay, so it'll be really hard to rotate that data. That's about 7 days of data, by the way, 1 gig. Okay? And you don't collect all that in log management, you don't have to. There's a lot of filtering you can do. Yep. You now immediately know, yep, you know something bad happened and to reimage the box or go into forensics mode if the logs are cleared and you're not collecting them centrally. So good question. I saw another hand. We got a few minutes. Anybody? Come on. There we go. In the back. There's 2. Green shirt first and then a plaid shirt. So the registry is pretty quick when you do a compare. The disk, of course, doing files, it depends how many files are in the box and what kind of disks there are. An SSD will do it in 15 minutes, no problem. But if it's a big disk like SQL servers and all that, yeah, it can take 35, 40 an hour. I teach a malware discovery class in Oklahoma City. You can go online and see if anybody's interested in coming to the class. And then a Windows IR logging class, July 18th through 20th. So we actually go through that, and you'll get the various how long it takes on people's systems. It depends on spindle, how many files, what SSD, and the configuration. So yeah, it does take some time. You do have to run as an administrator to get the access we need. Great question. Great question. Yes, absolutely. Or system. Either one. So schedule it as a task, run logmd, dump it every day. I actually have a user that wants to do that and send the CSVs over really slow links and then consume them in Splunk because it's the easiest way they have because they can't put the enterprise agents and get it over the slow links. I never really thought of it using it that way, but the CSV was designed to suck into Splunk or log management on purpose. Yes? Am I? Not really. Not really. I'm not seeing any super advanced techniques in the commodity stuff at all. Mostly again, we're not very good at looking at this stuff, so they're dropping it in obvious places. They're slightly obfuscating the names. Even obfuscating the names is pretty stupid. They should really make it look like Flash and Windows Media Player, right? But they're still, because we're not catching it at the rate we need to, because if you make it one letter, or those funny characters you saw, when I look at a box, it's like, yep, not good, not good. It's immediate to me that sticks out, as it should to you. So good question. Any more? Yep. You've got the Python backend to do that. You can actually set the file location in the universal forwarder to collect that CSV, and then you just have to implement as you run a scheduled job, whatever to run it, or however you want to run it, run key on boot, however. You would have to make sure you manage that because, again, Splunk locks the file. You're not using the same file. You probably dump it as, Monday, _01 through Friday _31 if you want to do the whole month. But yeah, let Splunk do that for you with the Universal Forwarder or any of the other tools that work the same way. More? That's it? So you guys scared about the malware I just showed you? Yes. Sort of? Yeah, you will not stop them. I don't care. We had Tripwire, Tipping Point, Nexpose, Big Fix, Splunk. Yeah, they got in. There's nothing we can do to stop them. It's detecting them and then reacting to it is the only way to deal with these advanced actors, period. Period, period, period. Yes, the other question. Yep. None. I turn it on fully in a gaming environment. There are no more stingy, stubborn, resource, paranoid individuals than gamers because of clearly gaming is, every piece of CPU, right? It just has no impact because Splunk's good enough as things execute to get that data out of that log. It's just not that burdensome. I almost defy you to secretly do it and then no one will notice. Unless you upgrade your universal forwarders too fast, you don't test, you'll get a bad universal forwarder and that will not have a good day for you. So be careful when you upgrade your syslog agent. They do occasionally have memory leaks and weird stuff like that. So test on that. That's, Splunk releases them really often. Any more? All right, you now know how to go find commodity malware. You now know how to turn this stuff on to collect it. You even have a free tool to do it. Or if you really want to get into the reporting, $300. I mean, it's really cheap. And you know how to get the stuff into Splunk. And now you have what you need to catch Carlos Perez, Dave Kennedy, Ben 10, Kevin, and everybody else we heard of. We are working on a Mac version, by the way, of the cheat sheet, so that's coming. But that's a little more difficult. So Dan's talk is going to help a lot with that because we're actually going to have him attack a box and we turn everything on and see what we can catch. If we catch enough, then it'll be good to go. Any other questions? You've got takeaways and homework. I gave you homework. How many other talks gave you homework? And I gave you rock and roll. The best talk for last.
Thank you so much for coming to ShowMeCon. We will see you back next year.